Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us today, again, whether that's Florida, California, Idaho, wherever it is, we just want to say thank you for joining us on this journey. Here at Ethos, what we do is we take the Bible, specifically Torah right now, and we just delve into the text. We look at the author, we look at who the author was intending the audience to be. We'll look at the words, phrases. We'll even look at the people who wrote this, how they interpreted it. And so we'll look at generations and generations of interpretation over the text. And so we do all of this because we think the Bible is filled with so much beauty, so much relevance specifically for today, that we think it needs responsible study. There's so many people that will just kind of read it over with a very surface level reading, which is fine. But there's something so much bigger just waiting below. And so what we do is we just take time all throughout the weeks to uncover that and then share it with you. And so today we're going to do what we do every single week for the last almost 2 years now. We are doing our in-depth study of the book of Genesis. And I was even talking with a friend the other day. I said, we're moving through Genesis. And he said, I feel like you told me you were doing that like years ago. I said, yeah, it's been almost 2 years and we are still in it. And he said, is there that much to talk about? And I said, yes. In fact, many rabbis that take this book seriously will take upwards to 3 years studying it. And so for us, we want to do the responsible thing and delve in, but we want to go deep. And so Genesis, we're going to move into our next section of this story. But before we do, reminder, again, this book was not a history book. It was not written to give specific exact dates, names, places, all of that, so we would look back and look at it as we do history. The idea here is, again, they're in Babylonian captivity, 587 BC. And they're asking the question, how do we hold on to what it means to be Jewish? And so Torah, again, is a written response of all of the stories, all the epic tales, all of the wisdom writings, all of it, all of the sayings, it's all put together so that they essentially will not assimilate, so that the future generations will know what it looks like to be Jewish. And they'll want to continue to stay Jewish. And so again, every time that Torah is brought out, there's rejoicing, there's celebration, there's anticipation, right? The rabbi is about to expand on what it means to be Jewish. The rabbi is about to expand on our values, our core values, our rituals. They're going to share with us what it means to be a Hebrew. And so there's so much excitement, anticipation. People lean in when Torah is brought out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of lean in. Torah, again, is a narrative of Israel. So whenever you hear Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, remember, these are less literal. And one can argue they were literal or not, and that's fine. That's not the argument I want to delve into. The idea here is they are pictures of Israel. Every single one of them. They're ideas of what Israel looks like when they go the right or the wrong direction or simply miss the point, right? And so that's the idea over and over again. So today, we're going to delve into chapter 37. Last week, we went 37, 1 through 11. Today, we're going to just jump into chapter 37, 12 through 22. And then the following week, we'll finish off with chapter 37. So reminder again, Jacob, we move into after Jacob into Joseph. When we get to Joseph, remember, Joseph is a story not just about some good-looking kid with a nice coat, right? Joseph is the highs and the lows of Israel, right? In the story of Joseph, you will find the story of Israel. You'll find the story of into captivity, calling out, begging for the promise fulfilled, leaving captivity, experiencing freedom. You will see the same kind of concept. It's going to be even more creative, though, because Jacob, in this instance, is going to find his solace, his peace, his hope while he's with Egypt. And so this is an interesting play for the Israelite people who are writing this. It's a really creative take. So here we go. Let's read it first, and then we'll delve in. And his brothers went to pasture their father's flocks in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are your brothers not pasturing in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now and see to your brother's welfare and the welfare of the flocks. Bring me back word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. Then a man found him, and behold, he was straying in the field. And the man asked him, saying, "What are you looking for?" Right? What are you looking for, Joseph? Interesting, right? Verse 16. And he said, "I am looking for my brothers. Tell me now, where are they pasturing?" And the man said, They have traveled away from here, for I overheard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers, and he found them in Dothan. And they saw him from afar, and when he had yet not drawn near to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. Yeah, the story gets interesting, right? So they said to one another, "Behold, the dreamer is coming," right? The dreamer is coming. "So now let us kill him, and we will cast him into one of the pits, and we will say, 'The wild beast devoured him,' and we will see what will become of his dreams," right? Yeah, good. But Reuben heard, and he saved him from their hands, and he said, "Let us not deal him a deadly blow." Essentially, let's not kill him is the interpretation. And Reuben said to them, "Do not shed blood. Cast him into this pit, which is in the desert, but do not lay a hand upon him in order to save him from their hand to return to him to his father." So there's the story. This is kind of, again, the setup. Things are getting climactic. We're moving to that climactic moment, right? But the story's setting it all up for us. We know now the brothers, they despise Joseph, right? And the brothers despise him. There's conflict there. Yet one of the brothers still kind of has a heart for him, even though he's willing to throw him into a pit. There's an interesting story here. And again, if you are the 12 tribes, if you are an Israelite, a Jewish person, you're already making these interesting connections because, yeah, the 12 tribes were constantly at each other's throats, constantly warring with one another. And so let's delve in. Verse 12, notice this. "And his brothers went to pasture their father's flocks in Shechem." So going to pasture your father's flock, this is actually an ancient Jewish phrase. And truthfully, many tribes use this kind of phrasing as well. But the idea here is that you are going to take on your father's trade, right? You're gonna take over the family business. This is the idea. You are now old enough that you will do what the ancestors did. You'll do what dad and grandpa and great grandpa did before you, right? You're going to step into adulthood. That's the idea here. Now, there's word Shechem. This is another interesting word, right? The word Shechem means to shoulder, to carry the weight of something. And so notice this, the brothers here, they're taking on the family responsibility, right? They're of age. The question, of course, though, for anyone reading this is, why is Joseph not with them? Right? Why is Joseph not bearing the weight? Why is Joseph not participating in the Shechem? Right? Why is he not pasturing? And if anyone who's ever read the Bible, you're already making the connection, aren't you? If you're Jewish, you would have made it immediately, right? This is the story of David, right? Oftentimes you'll see these stories kind of recycled. And the idea here is, again, it's not really about David. It's not really about Joseph. It's about Israel. Right? This is a story about Israel. So why is Joseph? Why is Joseph not out pasturing? Why is David not out there with his brothers in the war? Right? So these are all concepts we begin to kind of pick up. But the idea here deeper is Joseph is not yet, according to Rashi, and I'm kind of summarizing here, he's not of age. He like David again can't take on the responsibility yet, because he's got to wait until the appropriate time. So he, again, is the annoying brother. He's the one that's not quite ready yet for the responsibility. And this begs the question of, when does a prophet know, when does a messianic archetype know that they're ready to begin sharing a message? The answer, of course, is experience, one, and another one is they must wander the wilderness for a time. Right? When you think of Jesus, when you think of Moses, when you think of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of them had moments of wandering before they brought a message to their people. And so this is the deeper implication here. Joseph is not ready yet for this journey, right? He's not ready yet to begin sharing fully. People aren't ready to hear it yet. He must take time to wander the wilderness. And this is why, again, many people, they'll speculate, why didn't Jesus, why don't we have anything written about him before? Well, if you had had much written about him before, any Jewish person would have said, who's this guy? He's too young. He has not wandered the wilderness. He's not wandered the desert, right? This is the idea. Joseph has not yet wandered the desert, but he's about to. 13. And Israel said to Joseph, are your brothers not pasturing in Shechem? So think about this. Are your brothers, the deeper idea here, are they shouldering the weight of our family? Are they keeping with our values? Are they doing what it means to be a part of our family? Are they upholding our tradition? That's what the idea here of Shechem is. Are these brothers, are they truly keeping Judaism kosher? Yeah. Are they keeping Judaism kosher? Are they doing what it means to be Jewish? So he's already kind of showing some favoritism, isn't he? He's asking his son to kind of go oversee, is this thing happening or not? Yeah, good. So let's keep moving. Verse 13, come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, here I am. So a couple things. Joseph, he is the messenger, right? He's checking up. He's making sure things are supposed to be, the brothers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? The brothers are upholding Shechem. He's going to do this. He, according to Peter Enns, he is part of a tradition. Listen to what Peter Enns says about this. Messianic archetypes were sent to share messages to Israel, the nation, right? Often these are warnings, and more often than not, these warnings were not received with joy, but met with anger and violence. When you were a prophetic voice, if you were someone going to Israel to share messages, warnings, to check up on Israel, you were not always treated well, were you? Especially with family, right? Jesus says sometimes you go into your own city, and that's where they despise you most, right? So the idea here, you're checking on your brothers. Brothers don't always want to be checked on, do they? The nation of Israel doesn't always want to be checked on. And then, of course, there's this phrase, and we've talked about it before. Here I am. He says to his father, here I am. Does that mean his father is blind, can't see where anything? Well, no, that's not the idea, actually. The idea here is Joseph is saying, look, I'm ready. I'm ready to start this journey. I'm ready to begin to uphold Shechem. I'm ready to put some of the weight of what it means to be ahead of the family. I'm ready to begin to partake in that. That's what he's saying here. Here I am. It's the beginning of movement toward wisdom. It's the beginning of the hero's journey. Here I am, send me, right? Here I am, Samuel says. Here I am, David says. And that's when the journey gets really interesting. That's when giants fall. That's when we see prophetic moments where they go up in a blaze of glory. That's the moment. There's a here I am, and then there's amazing action after. Every good story has a here I am moment. Let's keep going. 14. Excuse me. Now go and see to your brothers' welfare and the welfare of the flocks, and bring me back word. So, keeping with this idea, the prophetic voice, we're going to see what the tribe's welfare is like. This is, again, the action of the prophet. Right? We're going to check on Israel. We're going to check on the pulse. We're going to see, are we actually upholding what the divine has called us to do or not? Right? Are we doing the things that are going to bring life or bring destruction? What path are we on right now? Verse 15. Then a man found him, and behold, he was straying in the field, and the man asked him, saying, what are you looking for? Right? What a weird moment. All of a sudden, boop, here comes this stranger. Weird, right? But in storytelling, really good storytelling, there are strangers that you meet at these gates. There's strangers that are going to lead you into the right path, right? The stranger here, I find it really interesting. What are you looking for? Right? Literarily, I find this question so good. For the hero, what are you looking for? Joseph, of course, is going to say, well, my brothers. right? But Joseph is actually looking for something far deeper. He's just not aware of it yet. And so on a literary, right, a literature level, it's a really beautiful moment. The stranger asks, "What are you looking for? What is this journey intending to do for you?" Joseph thinks it's this. Truthfully, though, he'll answer that question very differently later on. He thinks it's to check on his brothers. The truth is, it's to save his brothers, right? He thinks he's just stepping out home to go on a journey to chase a dragon, right? The bigger picture, and again, I'm being facetious, found literary tradition, but the idea here is Joseph. He's about to partake in a really crazy adventure, isn't he? Yeah. Also, rabbinical tradition says this is not just a stranger. Rabbinical tradition has this being Gabriel. And so the stranger at the gate, in the field, or across the street are often the voice most needed in moments of indecision. The stranger gives Joseph a warning and a blessing. So again, the stranger, whether you believe it was Gabriel or just some really involved, interesting, wise man, whatever it was, the stranger kind of gives him a setup, a choice, and it's going to bring us to really some interesting moments later on. But the interesting moment here is the choice is a fascinating one. Because look at this. Notice this. And the brothers said, "I am looking for my brothers. Tell me now where they are pasturing." And here's what the man says. He says, "Ah, yes, okay, the brothers. Yes, I overheard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" Dothan. The word here means a place with two wells, one that is dry and one that's full of water, one that's wet. Two different wells. Dothan. And when you look at rabbinical interpretation, there's interesting stuff about Dothan. One dry, one full, right? Joseph's story is really the story of Dothan. Two wells, right? While there's pain, there's dryness in the beginning of the narrative, the idea here is there's richness, there's blessing at the end. So there's famine and there's plenty, right? So Joseph is actually going to be involved in stepping into both of these wells. But the interesting thing is Joseph is going to step into the dry well first. He has to. It's the story of Israel. Israel falls into captivity. There's spells of dryness, pain, brokenness. We're thirsty. We're crying out, right? We're crying out in captivity. There is dryness. And yet at the end, the well overflows. Dothan. It's the beginning. It's two wells, which is really all part of what happens in life. Dothan, two wells. Verse 18, "And they saw him from afar when he had not yet drawn near them. They plotted against him to put him to death." Right? What kind of brothers are these? A prophet, again, is always going to meet these same fates, aren't they? Jeremiah, Elijah, basically the business of being a prophet, it's not a safe one. It's just not. Whenever you have a prophetic message, whenever you're checking the pulse of the nation, especially if you are the Jewish nation in Torah, it's a scary moment, isn't it? Yeah, Jonah, all these different individuals. It's a scary moment to be checking the pulse, isn't it? Yeah. Verse 19, "They said to one another, 'Behold, the dreamer is coming.'" I love this phrase so much. The dreamer is coming. The dreamer. The word here means to basically see ahead. It's not simply this idea of like someone that just dreams, right? The dreamer here, the idea here means someone that looks ahead, someone that is really in touch with creativity, with advancement. The idea here is the dreamer is like the person that makes changes. The dreamer. I started to think about who are the dreamers. And I just immediately, these people popped in my mind. And there are a plethora of hundreds and hundreds of others, right? We can think of them. These individuals popped in my mind. And I could, of course, Virginia Woolf and her writing and others, but these were the five. I thought, oh yeah. Yeah, there's Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream, right? where children of different ethnicities, sex, race, they'll come together, they'll hold hands, right? We'll be unified. I have this dream. Will you dream that dream with me? Right? That was Martin Luther King. Leonardo da Vinci, one of the most interesting Renaissance men ever, always asking, what could we do differently? What's the next thing? How can we advance? Right? Abraham Lincoln, right? When you read about Abraham Lincoln and the ideas he had for the nation and the ideas of unity, bringing people together, it was really fascinating. He did not give up on this dream, and we bear fruit from this today. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, again, the dreamers. Let's go to the moon. Let's find ways on our phone to have more technology in our phone than they did for the moon landing, right? Fascinating stuff. The dreamers. These are the people who often, the realities, they'll shape them for the future generations. I am thankful for the dreamers. So this is the idea. Joseph, here comes the dreamer, right? Here comes the Steve Jobs. Right? Here comes the Martin Luther King Jr. Here they come, right? We have to hear more about all the crazy ideas of what we could be as a nation. Here we go, right? Here comes Joseph. Verse 20. So now let us kill him, and we will cast him into one of the pits. And we will say, a wild beast devoured him. And we will see what will become of his dreams, right? The idea here is they're doing everything they can to change the promise. Right? They know that Jacob, he has these ideas of what the future is going to hold for Israel, but they do not want that to be their future, right? Because that future involves them not having as much power, them not being as important. So what can we do to change the future? Well, we're going to get rid of Joseph, right? And so they begin partaking in this story we've heard before in Genesis, right? The story of Abraham trying to make the promise happen on his own, right? Isaac, Jacob, you have these moments in history for Israel when the messianic archetypes, the founders, the fathers of their nation, took the promise into their own hands rather than trusting the divine to fulfill it. And when they do, they usually make a muck of things, don't they? And so the brothers are essentially doing the very same thing. And this, again, is rabbinic tradition. They always associate the brothers with these other individuals who always chose to try to fulfill the promise their own way. Yeah. Verse 21. But Reuben was different, right? Kind of. Reuben, he says, he heard them. He saved him from their hands, it says. He saved them from their hands. Reuben is the eldest son. Right? He's the one that deserves the blessing, right? Because he's the oldest. And while he's still part of this diabolical plan, he does still kind of value his brother's life. And so this makes Reuben still a positive figure for the Hebrew story. So when Jewish people talk about Reuben, you'll find often there is a positive element to the Reuben story. Reuben is kind of seen as the one that keeps Joseph alive, right? He partakes in that, and you'll kind of see as the story plays out. But verse 21, we'll end on this. Do not shed blood. Cast him into this pit, which is the desert, but do not lay a hand upon him, in order to save him from their hands, to return him to his father. Reuben, again, he wants to keep his brother alive, which essentially means, to the larger Hebraic story, there is a trust that what Joseph said is true, right? There is hope for Israel, right? And it's going to be a different promise than maybe what he and the other brothers wanted. One writer says this, Rabbi Raboa, the Holy Spirit testifies for Reuben that he said this only to save him, so that he would be able to come and take him out there. He said, I am the firstborn and the eldest of them all. The sin will be attributed only to me. So the idea here, many of them feel, Reuben is saying, look, put the sin on me, right? I'll take the blame. I'll take the blame for this terrible thing. And yet I'll come back and try to save him later. So he's basically, he's trying to take on the curse, the pain of the whole thing. He's trying to put it on himself, which makes him kind of a positive figure in the story, which we don't always discuss. Ramdas says this, sometimes intentions aren't enough. Right? He has good intentions, But when faced with good or bad thing, we must choose the good no matter the cost. And so the story of Reuben in this moment is an interesting one for Israel, right? We know the right thing to do is to not throw him in a pit at all. But what decision will we have when faced with a group of people saying, look, let's go this direction, right? When faced with any kind of peer pressure, what will we do, right? When the majority of Israel is saying, hey, let's just take a king, right? Every other nation's taking a king, but our writings say not to. But what should we do, right? Israel oftentimes will cave into that pressure. They'll do the wrong thing because the larger voice is screaming for it. Even though the one lone voice is sharing a beautiful message that things are going to change, there's going to be a powerful shift for Israel, yet the other 11 say, no. Just trust us, right? We're going to make things happen. We're going to make the promise take place, right? And so again, what will you do when you're faced with that kind of peer pressure, right? What will you do when you're faced with a group of people all pushing against you, even though you know the thing that they're doing is wrong? What will you do, Israel? Right? What will you do, listeners here at Ethos? That's kind of the setup here now for the story of Joseph. And we're about to jump in. So I started thinking, what do I do to take it home today? Because we're breaking the story up a little bit. What can we pull from? For me, I was really pulled into Reuben. I was really pulled to the story of Reuben in this moment. How to stand up for what's right. How do we stand up for what's right, even when the people around us sometimes are choosing the wrong direction? And I know this sounds kind of almost adolescent, but I think for many of us, peer pressure, it's a reality. Right? We can be peer pressure into so many things. Gossip, maybe slacking off at work, not being our best version of ourselves because other people are simply not there either. We can oftentimes cave to that peer pressure from others. And so how do we choose? How do we stand up for the right thing? And I know oftentimes in my life, there were moments where I regretted not standing up, not being bold enough when I saw something that was wrong. And so I started to look into different writers who have discussed this, and Ram Dass was one of them, and that's how I found that quote actually this week. And he gives a couple of ideas. The one he says to start with is learn to act even when you're afraid. So part of standing up for what you believe in is learning to be courageous. So he kind of goes in this idea, courage doesn't mean that you're not afraid, right? We're all kind of afraid. Anyone who's ever been a public speaker will tell you, you're always afraid. Right? Will Ferrell gave this great commencement speech. He says, I'm always afraid, but I get up and I do the thing because I know the thing is what brings life. And so many courageous people are afraid, but they act anyways because they know it's important. So if you believe the thing's important, if you believe, despite your fear that the thing is like wrong, then focus on who you're helping. Ram Dass' advice was focus on the person you're helping or the movement you're helping. And often when you're standing up for what you believe in, you're doing so to help others. So focusing on how this is going to benefit can help you feel more courageous, and it can help you learn to step in and act. Number 2, encourage acts of bravery. I loved this idea. If you're like most people, you likely commit small acts of bravery throughout the day and you don't even realize it. Right? So for instance, maybe you've been dreading a phone call you need to make. You finally pluck up the courage to do it. Take a moment, acknowledge, hey, I did the thing. Right? And at some point in time, Ram Dass says, you will get to the place where you'll realize, I am a courageous person. And when the big thing takes place and you have to act, you already have all of this texture behind you saying, I am courageous. I do stand up for the right thing. And then lastly, he says, stand up for the helpless. And again, these are the words of Jesus, basically, right? Stand up for the helpless. Put your beliefs into action. It means you stand up for those people, right? Or those ideas. Sometimes people are unwilling to speak up because they're a little nervous. But if you're going to say you believe in compassion, you love mercy, you believe in justice, you have to put this to practice. Right? So for instance, you may need to step in when you see someone being attacked, bullied, treated poorly, unfairly, right? You might need to step in. Someone's talking about someone in a really negative way, step in, right? Do the right thing. And you can do that in a positive way, right? Try to stop it in its tracks. Maybe interrupt the person with something positive about the other. Whatever it is, learn to step in, help the helpless. I love this idea. It's directly from Jesus, really, right? Learn to not just love mercy, love kindness, but learn to live it by helping others. So good. Anyways, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. We're about to get into some fun action in the book of Joseph. It is so good. But this was a really interesting one, Reuben, today. So if you enjoyed this, look at ethos-church.org/donate. We are a nonprofit organization. And the only way we continue to be able to do what we do is by your donations. And so please consider donating, journeying with us as we continue sharing more and more of this beautiful interpretations, ideas. We bring so much every single week. And so please consider donating to Ethos. And then, as always, if you want to join us in the living rooms, this is where you can get interactive live stuff with us. We get people from all over the nation coming together. So much fun. And as always, hit that subscribe button. Let us know that you're enjoying this. Share this with others. Let's build this channel. Everyone, thank you so much. And we'll see you next week when we conclude this chapter and get into the story of Joseph. I love you. See you next week.